Let's bring in now our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. Michael, are you surprised? Are you shocked that Ukraine's able to carry out such an attack, an assassination, so close to the Kremlin?
Well, not so surprised, Wilf, because they've shown that they're quite audacious in doing this sort of thing. It's not that easy to plant a bomb so near to the Kremlin in the Ryabinsky prospect. But nevertheless, they did it. And the SBU, the Secret Service, and also the GUR, the military intelligence branch of the Ukrainian forces, are actually very good at doing this sort of thing. And also, Russia's domestic security really isn't very good. I mean, we saw that in the Crocus attacks that were nothing to do with Ukraine. Remember the big arena attacks, the Crocus arena attacks of last year? It was very easy for an Islamist group to plant a series of bombs inside a concert venue. I mean, because Moscow has not been used to dealing with terrorism, really, it's actually more open than a lot of Russians would like to believe. So the Ukrainians have actually made their point that they arraigned this man, Kirillov, as a war criminal yesterday because of his involvement in chemical weapons attacks on the battlefield, and he's been killed today. That's very clear symbolism, and they've admitted it, which is not what they normally do. They normally just keep quiet about it and let the rest of the world make up their own minds. So this is clearly a tactic by Kyiv to shake the Russians and show something to the rest of the world.
Michael, what are the rules of engagement for something like this under international law, or at least convention and precedent? Obviously, the word terrorism has been used by the Russians. Is that a fair word to use, or is this totally legitimate action by Ukraine?
No, it is a fair word. It is a terrorist act, exactly as the Russians have tried to commit many, many terrorist acts in Ukraine. I mean, Zelensky has survived at least 3 assassination attempts that we know of, and probably quite a lot more. Some say 6 or 7. So both sides are using what is, in any definition, terrorism against each other because they're involved in a war. Now, in Russia's case, they're supposed to be involved in a special military operation, not a war. And if we were doing that, Britain would not resort to terrorism. The Ukrainians are fighting a war for survival, so they do resort to terrorism. There's a sort of there's not a moral equivalence in that, but there is you can understand why they do it, but it does put them into the wrong category for this sort of thing. But, you know, they argue that this man is, from their point of view, a war criminal. He's sanctioned internationally. They have some sort of right to go after him.
Does this hurt Putin in terms of what the domestic audience make of it, or oddly does it strengthen some of the arguments that he's making to his citizens?
Yeah, well, I think both. It will strengthen the narrative of the Russians that they're fighting terrorists, they're fighting Nazis and ultra-right-wingers in Ukraine. So that's part of the narrative, and that hasn't changed for the last more than 2 or 3 years, actually. But it will actually weaken Putin in the sense that it brings the war back to Moscow just before Christmas. You know, here we are with another attack, a very specific, targeted attack on a military figure, you know, right within the centre of Moscow. This is as symbolic as having drones, you know, hit the domes in the Kremlin, which happened over a year ago now. So it does make a point, and it's a small victory, if you like, for Kyiv in a very dirty war.
What will the West think about this, Mike? I mean, obviously, this wasn't using an ATACMS or a Storm Shadow or something provided by the West, but clearly it is an attack right at the heart of Russia by a country that the West is providing weapons to. Would they have preferred Ukraine not to do this, or be pleased that they've had this success?
I think they'll be secretly pleased about it, and they see this as all part of the bargaining process up to January, when we all anticipate that the war will begin to change with the incoming President Trump. Remember, the Russians are pushing every button they can find at the moment to gain advantage over Ukraine, and Ukraine are pushing their buttons to do the same. So I think that the Western world will feel that this is, in a sense, justified, even though they don't really want to justify it legally. And remember, the Russians have been using riot control agents, CS gas. Interestingly, you know, I mean, CS gas is available to use as a riot control agent, though it's pretty severe, but it's banned as a weapon of war by the Chemical Weapons Convention because it's used in very high lethal concentrations. And they've been using it, the Russians have been using it on their gas grenades, this K-51 grenade. They've been dropping thousands of them with very high concentrations of CS gas and cyanide all over the battlefield. So there's no question that the Russians are breaking international law and committing war crimes on a systematic basis every day of the week in Ukraine itself.
Professor Michael Clarke, as always, thanks so much.